I discovered my wife had stolen $200, $0 from our joint account and secretly transferred it to her affair partner's offshore account. Then found out she had forged my signature to sell our family home. Now we're headed to court over millions in property. It all started with a gut feeling I couldn't shake. I mean, I'd always known my wife, Jessica, was a bit of a bitch. Loud, manipulative, always throwing tantrums when she didn't get her way. But I never thought she'd go this far. The signs were small at first. Her phone constantly buzzing late at night, her being unusually secretive about money, and her dodging my questions about her whereabouts. I remember one night catching her in a lie about a girls' night, only to find her sneaking out of the house after I'd gone to bed. I just brushed it off as her typical drama, but something felt off. Then came the real shocker. One day I was checking our joint bank account, just to see if everything was in order, and I noticed an irregular transfer of $200, $0. That amount is no small change. I immediately called the bank, and they confirmed the transfer had gone to an offshore account registered under her name's alias. My stomach sank. I knew that money was supposed to be our savings for the house, the kids' college fund, everything. And she had secretly moved it all without telling me. That's when I started digging deeper. I pulled up her phone records, her emails, everything I could get my hands on. And what I found made my blood run cold. There were text messages, flirty, suggestive, downright explicit, between her and some guy named Mark. They'd been seeing each other for months. I also found photos of her with him, some from a hotel room, others from what looked like expensive dinners. She lied when I confronted her about it, said she was just talking, that it was innocent, that I was paranoid. But I knew better. I'd seen the evidence. I had proof she was cheating on me with a man she called her business partner. But I now knew it was more than that. The betrayal ran deeper than I had ever imagined. She'd been lying about everything, her whereabouts, her activities, her feelings. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. The woman I trusted, the woman I built my life with, was secretly screwing around, stealing from us, and lying to my face. It was like waking up from a nightmare, only this nightmare was real, and it was happening right in front of my eyes. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind for so long, trusting her when she'd been planning her own version of a perfect lie. The shock, the anger, everything just hit me all at once. I knew I couldn't stay passive anymore. I had to figure out what to do next, but honestly I was lost in a storm of betrayal I didn't see coming. After I had all the evidence laid out, her secret texts, the offshore account details, the forged signatures, I felt like I was drowning in a mixture of rage and confusion. How could she do this? How could she betray me, our family, for some guy she barely knew? I mean, I knew Jessica was difficult, but I never thought she'd go this far. Stealing $200, $0 from our joint account, secretly transferring it offshore, and then forging my signature to sell our house. Those were crimes. I couldn't wrap my head around how a woman I'd trusted for years could turn into this manipulative, dishonest version of herself. The next step was confronting her. I remember calling her into the living room that evening, my hands trembling, voice tight. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the money, the forged signature. Her face twisted into a sneer, a look I'd never seen before. "Oh, so now you're the detective, huh?" she snapped. "You're overreacting, you're just jealous. This doesn't mean anything. You're making a huge deal out of nothing." But I wasn't about to back down. I laid out the evidence on the table, watching her face turn pale, then red with anger. She started lying, saying she was just talking to Mark, that the money was a loan from her sister, that she had no idea about the offshore account. She said she was only doing it because I was neglecting her, that I never paid attention anymore. Her words felt like a slap. She was spinning stories, twisting everything to make herself the victim, as if I was the villain. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her, to make her admit what she'd done, but I stayed calm. I had to be strategic. That night my mind was racing. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, her lies, her sneers, her betrayal. I felt so betrayed, so stupid for not seeing the signs earlier. I had always been the stable, responsible one, working hard, providing for us, trying to keep the peace. And she was out there, sneaking around, stealing from us, lying through her teeth. It was like finding out the woman I loved and trusted was actually a complete stranger. I was furious, yes, but underneath that I felt crushed. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd built a life with, was gone, replaced by someone cold, manipulative, and selfish. I started questioning everything, our marriage, my judgment, whether I'd missed all the red flags. It was a sinking feeling. I had to decide what to do next. I knew I couldn't stay in this marriage, not after what I'd uncovered. But I also knew I needed to be careful. Jessica wasn't the type to go quietly. She was bitchy, manipulative, and she'd fight for her lies. I had to plan my next move carefully to protect myself and whatever was left of my dignity. The betrayal cut deep, but I was determined not to be a victim of her lies. I'd already lost a part of my trust. Now I had to regain control of my life. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. The adrenaline from the confrontation still burned in my chest, but underneath it all, there was a gnawing sense of helplessness. I knew Jessica was dangerous. She'd lied so much she could probably lie her way out of a court case if she had to. Still, I couldn't just sit back and let her walk all over us. I had to come up with a plan, a way to protect what was mine and make her pay for what she'd done. First, I contacted a lawyer. I wanted to know my rights, what I could do about the forged signature, the stolen money, and the offshore account. The lawyer, a sharp guy named Mark, explained that I had a strong case for fraud and breach of trust. He told me to gather every piece of evidence I could, bank statements, emails, texts, anything that proved Jessica's lies and illegal activities. It was a lot to process, but I knew I had to be meticulous. I couldn't afford to make mistakes, especially with the way she'd lied so convincingly before. Meanwhile, I started digging into the offshore account details. Turns out, Jessica had set up a shell company in the islands, some offshore firm that nobody knew about. She transferred the money there in chunks, using fake invoices and false paperwork. It was obvious she'd planned this for a while. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. She'd been sneaking around, stealing our savings, and now she was trying to wipe her tracks with forged signatures and fake documents. I realized I was dealing with someone who was highly manipulative, and I had to be just as smart. I also decided I needed to know where the money actually went. I hired a private investigator to track the offshore account activity and see if I could find where Jessica had transferred the funds. What I found was shocking. She'd moved a significant portion of that money into a secret account in Dubai, hidden behind a web of offshore trusts. The amount was in the millions. That's when I knew this wasn't just about a few $100,000 anymore. Jessica was planning to disappear, to start a new life somewhere far away with her lover and all the money she'd stolen from us. In the meantime, I started documenting everything. I took screenshots of her texts, saved bank statements, emails. I wanted irrefutable proof. I also began secretly recording conversations, just in case. I knew Jessica was the type to lie her way out of trouble, and I had to be prepared. I felt like I was fighting a war I didn't fully understand, but I knew I had to win. I couldn't let her get away with this. The emotional toll was enormous. I'd always been the responsible one, the steady husband who provided and protected. Now I felt like I was unraveling piece by piece. Every time I thought about what she'd done, lying, cheating, stealing, it made me sick. How could someone I loved do this? How could she betray me, our family, for some cheap affair and a stash of stolen money? I was furious, betrayed, and broken all at once. But I also knew I couldn't let her see me like this. I had to keep my composure, stay focused, and execute my plan. That's what I told myself every night: stay strong, stay smart, because if I didn't, she'd win, and I refused to let her have that victory. Over the next few days, I worked tirelessly to put my plan into motion. I stayed calm on the surface, but inside I was boiling with rage and determination. Jessica thought she was clever, that she could hide her tracks forever, but I knew her tricks now, and I was going to use them against her. The key was timing. I had to strike at the right moment when she least expected it. First, I contacted a forensic accountant to help me untangle the financial mess. We went through every transaction, every document, every email she'd used to funnel the money offshore. It was painstaking, but we found inconsistencies, forged signatures, and fake invoices. The accountant confirmed that Jessica had forged my signature on the sale of our house. That was the final nail in her coffin. She'd illegally sold our family home, our biggest asset, without my knowledge or consent. I couldn't believe how far she'd gone. Meanwhile, I kept gathering evidence. I also reached out to a trusted friend who was a lawyer just to get a second opinion. She advised me to prepare for a legal battle, file for a restraining order, freeze the offshore accounts, and start the divorce proceedings. I knew Jessica wouldn't go down without a fight, so I had to be ready for her manipulations. I started documenting her recent behavior, her sudden absence, her evasiveness, her nasty comments when I asked about the money. It was clear she was panicked, trying to cover her tracks. One night I decided it was time to confront her again, but this time with everything in hand. I sat her down, showed her the evidence I'd collected, and told her I was going to the authorities. Her face twisted into a sneer, her voice dripping with venom. "You're crazy, Tom. You're just jealous because I found someone better. You're overreacting as usual." Her lies were so blatant it was almost laughable, but I wasn't laughing. I felt a cold fury building inside me. I told her I knew about her affair, the offshore accounts, the forged signatures. I told her I was done playing her game. That was the turning point. She started screaming, calling me all sorts of names: controlling, paranoid, a jealous fool. She said I was ruining everything, that I was a terrible husband, but I didn't care anymore. I had already crossed the point of no return. I told her I was filing for divorce and pressing charges for fraud, forgery, and theft. Her face went white, and she started crying, but I saw right through her tears. That was just her last attempt to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty or sorry for her. As I left the house that night, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I'd finally taken control of the situation, but I knew the fight wasn't over. Jessica was dangerous, and I needed to be prepared for her next move. The betrayal had cut so deep, but I was determined to get justice, to protect what little was left of our lives. I had a long road ahead, but I wasn't going to let her destroy me, or everything we'd built, without a fight. The most shocking part was how cold and calculating she'd become, willing to destroy us all for her own selfish gains. That realization made me more committed than ever to seeing this through. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, police reports, and endless phone calls. I was deep into the process of freezing accounts, filing for divorce, and preparing for a court battle that I knew would be brutal. Jessica, of course, didn't take it lying down. She started spreading lies, trying to turn the kids against me, claiming I was unstable and paranoid. But I had all the evidence, screenshots, bank statements, legal documents, that proved she'd forged my signature and stolen from us. One night, I received a call from the detective assigned to my case. Turns out, Jessica had tried to transfer more money out of the offshore account, but our lawyer had already flagged it. The authorities were now involved, and she was in serious legal trouble. Hearing that made my stomach drop, but also gave me a strange sense of relief. Justice was finally catching up to her. Meanwhile, Jessica's behavior grew more erratic. She'd show up at the house, screaming, accusing me of ruining her life, playing the victim. Big, tearful performances meant to manipulate anyone who would listen. But I refused to be swayed. I stayed calm, kept my distance, and let the legal process do its work. I knew she was trying to intimidate me, but I also knew she couldn't escape the truth forever. The court date was set. I was nervous, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I was doing the right thing, exposing her lies, holding her accountable. When the day arrived, I presented all my evidence: the forged signatures, the offshore transfers, the texts with Mark, and her attempts to hide everything. Jessica tried to deny everything, but her lies crumbled under cross-examination. The judge looked at the facts, the undeniable proof, and made it clear she was facing serious charges. The most shocking moment came when the judge ordered her to return the stolen money and freeze her offshore accounts. Jessica's face twisted with rage and frustration. She shouted, calling me every name in the book, trying to manipulate the court. But it was too late. The law was on my side. The judge also granted me full custody of the kids, citing her reckless behavior and financial misconduct. In the aftermath, I felt numb. I had lost a lot, the trust, the marriage, a sense of stability. But I also felt a strange sense of liberation. Jessica's manipulations were finally exposed and she was facing the consequences. I knew she'd try to fight back, to twist everything around, but I was prepared. I had the truth, the law, and a new sense of strength I never knew I had. Looking back, I realize how much I'd been. I trusted her for so long, thinking we were building something real. But her greed, her lies, her betrayal shattered all of that. It's hard to say whether I'll ever fully recover from this, but I do know one thing: I won't be a victim anymore. I've learned that some people are capable of incredible deception, and you have to stay vigilant. Trust is earned, not given blindly. And sometimes the only way to move forward is to face the truth head-on and fight for what's right. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize how much this whole ordeal has changed me. I used to think trust was the foundation of any relationship, but I've learned that sometimes trust can be exploited in ways you never imagined. Jessica's betrayal was a wake-up call. I saw firsthand how greed and manipulation can tear apart a life built on what seemed like solid ground. It's been a painful lesson, but one I needed to learn. I've come to see that revenge isn't about getting back at someone just to hurt them. It's about reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your peace of mind after everything been shattered. I never wanted this to come to a court battle, but I knew I had no choice. Jessica's actions left me no alternative but to fight for what was rightfully ours: our home, our savings, and my children's future. That fight was ugly, exhausting, and emotionally draining, but it was also necessary. I had to stand up for myself and for what little integrity I had left. Through this process, I've learned to be more cautious, more guarded, but also more resilient. I've rediscovered parts of myself I'd hidden away, strength I didn't know I possessed. I realize now that no matter how deep the betrayal, life moves forward. You have to find a way to pick up the pieces, rebuild, and trust again, though maybe differently this time. Maybe with more caution, more awareness. Most importantly, I've learned that people can surprise you, sometimes in the worst ways, sometimes in the best. Jessica's greed and lies showed her true colors, but they also reinforced my understanding of what truly matters: honesty, integrity, and the strength to walk away from what no longer serves you. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I'll say this: trust your instincts. Don't ignore the red flags. When something feels wrong, it probably is. And if you find yourself betrayed, don't be afraid to fight for your rights and your peace. It's hard, it's painful, but in the end, you come out stronger. You learn who you really are and what you're capable of enduring. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'm done living in her shadow. I've taken back control of my life, and while I'm still healing, I'm also moving forward. That's what counts. Sometimes the greatest victories come from the hardest battles, and I've learned that the truth, no matter how ugly, sets you free.